Okay, Tacky Talk time. This is the last full day of winter, Tacky, and we're so looking forward to springtime. How are you?
Doing good, Joe. It seems like we're trying to turn a corner every time we talk to a new page in our lives.
This is true, both with the weather and the pandemic, and hopefully the page is turning on both for the better.
Well, people would ask me when I get vaccinated. The governor announced it's going to be starting April 19th. Everyone's going to be able to have an opportunity to apply for the vaccine, and we've seen the scheduling issues. So I'm hoping by then the rest of us, almost 2.5 million folks who did not meet in phase one or two or three, will have an opportunity to get vaccinated. And again, I encourage everybody to please get vaccinated. And I do understand it's very frustrating, but it's very, very important for us to reach herd immunity. And that can only be accomplished by over 70% of the population reaching vaccination. If we do not, there will be a third wave because herd immunity has not been achieved. And those who have not been vaccinated will be very susceptible to whatever new wave of COVID comes. If it's a variant or not, it really doesn't matter. It will be a third wave. So, we have a chance this spring and early summer to get to herd immunity. And as the rest of the world also achieves this, maybe we can all travel again.
What do you think about the plans to go to the next phase of reopening?
The governor's feeling is that the numbers are good enough to open up again. Again, this is very contingent on all of us doing our part. I've been talking about this all winter, or last summer, or in the fall. If you don't wear your mask, if you don't, social distance, if you don't behave properly in restaurants, and listen to the retailers and the restaurant owners and the shop owners telling them, keep your distance, use a hand sanitizer. I mean, they'll all put signs up providing you different types of ways to sanitize as you walk in the door and out the door. You're the one that's holding back the economy now. It isn't the government. And
Speaking
I think
of,
that's the thing that people are reminded of. It's not the government now. It's us.
yeah, we do have the power. It sounds cliche, but you have the power for sure to make or break the future. And as you mentioned, simple things that we've been touting for over a year now: masks, hand washing, social distancing.
Yeah, not complicated. And if you're uncomfortable, obviously we can still do takeout. They're doing curbside pickup. The days are getting beautiful gradually. Hopefully this weekend's the last really chilly weekend. But the idea, you can take a walk to your local shop if you're near a business district in the state. You can still wait outside or take a walk around as your order's being ready. It's good to get some exercise if you have time. So, the nicer weather will make curbside pickup and people waiting for orders more palatable, as you can, make multiple orders in a business district, for example, and then you take a walk around picking them up.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you
So,
about the American Rescue Plan, Tacky. As you're aware, of course, the congressman came to the city earlier this week, announced Quincy's getting 46.3 million, part of the 8 billion that's coming to Massachusetts.
mhm.
How do you think the money should be allocated here in your district?
Well, that's a loaded question. You know that, right? So I think everybody wants it allocated their direction. It's still very complicated in the sense that there's probably more money coming in some form of COVID assistance, early education money, money, for example, for Eastern Nazarene, because they're a higher education institution in the city. And there's also all the different social service agencies. So the money coming direct to the city itself is not all the money. Various, like the YMCA may be qualifying for some assistance, right? So, as we kind of unroll this package even more, money to business owners, money to service agencies and higher education will have an impact on Quincy residents, meaning people get to go back to work. Vaccine means we can go back to a normal school living, and provide some outside stimulus into our economy. So, I'm not going to start telling the city council what to do. I think some of the money is going to be pre-allocated to certain things they have to do, so the mayor and the council can figure it out. But obviously, in the immediate term, the city still has a lot of COVID-related issues they have to fund for.
Yep.
And I think one of the things we definitely should look at is long-term issues. If we do not reach herd immunity, well, we better be prepared for what comes next.
Mm.
Increased testing. Increased testing is essential. This is the MO basically for every country out there who's serious about reopening their economy on the way through vaccination, is mass testing ability. and also increase preparation for protecting the most vulnerable and folks that are on the lowest socioeconomic as well as homeless,
Yeah.
where the highest degree spread possibility is. So, my advice would be, test, get ready for more testing and prep for a possible third wave, where we're going to have to go back to a higher alert if herd immunity is not achieved.
Yeah, I can't help but think that testing is really going to become a part of our daily routine. So, there are some at-home test kits now that have been approved. I'm sure there'll be more coming. So, I wonder if just from here on out, this is going to be part of our daily routine, like brushing our teeth.
Yeah, the FDA had approved this wintertime a home test kit that was made by an Australian company. This will not be the last local test kit that's done.
Right.
The challenge with the test kit is actually doing it correctly and what you're looking for. So if you watch the news around the world, some people are doing swabs in the back of your throat. Some people are doing swabs up your nose, which is the one you see the most common in the U.S. But if you don't do the swab correctly, you're not going to get the right result.
Hmm.
And I don't know about you, but I mean, the idea of taking a swab and just really just getting it up there to yourself, to tears, it's not all that appealing.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure the biotech companies around the planet and pharmaceutical companies and so forth are trying to find less intrusive but equally effective ways of extracting the necessary, let's say mucus, let's call it what it is,
Yep.
or phlegm out of your body, sufficient amounts so they can run an efficient test at home. And I'm confident, as we see in the vaccine and other technological advances, at some point something's going to come on the market. Now, how much we're going to pay for that?
Right. Yeah.
That's going to be a hard question, because how often you get tested? Can we afford to pay for this individually? Is insurance going to cover it? These are unanswered questions right now.
Exactly. Yeah. Anything going on Beacon Hill of notes in the past week, Tacky, we should know about?
We did the overrides on the governor's amendments, as well as making amendments to the global warming bill, things involving things like the stretch code, and which is, building efficient buildings, moving the needle on renewable energy purchasing. I mean, total renewable energy portfolio, how much renewable energy Massachusetts will use, has increased by 5% over the same time period. I think it's like 2030 was supposed to get to 40%. With incremental increase back there. This is definitely an anticipation of Hydro-Quebec coming through. I mean, we're extremely optimistic that Hydro-Quebec and the big wind should be ready in the next 3 years. If Hydro is definitely coming in the next 3 years. The windmills take longer to build. It's a lot. They have to build a lot of windmills, which people understand that. So by 2030, between those two renewable energy sources, we should be, moving further and further away from fossil fuels by 2030. And I think the legislature is very confident that those two sources will use a large part of our grid, and we'll continue to look to purchase power from out of state that is renewable based, as well as phasing out our conventional fossil fuels over time.
What do you think about the controversy regarding the MBTA that was brought up by the congressman earlier this week, chastising them for the service cuts, the furloughs, despite the fact that they've received like $1 billion in federal aid?
Yeah, the MBTA is a real complicated mess. I think if you ever look deep into it, it really is. The federal plan uses FY18 budget numbers. So it doesn't use FY19, 20, or 21. So they're looking at an older MBTA budget. It's not just our budget. It's every public transit in the U.S. that receives money is looking at a budget that's quite frankly out of date. And, as we discussed before, ridership is down significantly, well past 30, 40, 50, and during the pandemic, closer to 70, 80%, right?
Yeah.
And Hingham Ferry was averaging 7 people a week at one point. So there's that there's not enough fares to cover the cost. And 1/3 of the budget is fare driven. We've talked about the fact that the economy is going remote. Everybody watching this that has been working home probably has an employer contemplating whether or not to do staggered shifts or go remote more often. And as a result, a lot of folks do take the T to go into work, and there'll be reduced ridership. So I think the T is very complicated. I agree that they should be able to maintain equal level of service for the moment, but there is that long-term economic question we don't have a good answer for yet because it hasn't happened. And we know the T was running a deficit before this began.
Right.
And he's now gone a long period of time without. So I think the T's in an unenviable position of trying to anticipate the future, dealing with immediate pain that on a pre-existing budget deficit, because there's no more riders to get on a train. I mean, oh, we should put more riders. Well, then ride at 2:00 when it's off hours. That's not happening. That's not how work hours work. And then you got the issue of the fact that, like I said, at 2:00, you have a different ridership from 8 a.m. You have a different ridership from 11:30 to 5:30. It's all different. But even though they have less trains running, you still have trains that have less people.
Yeah, it raises the question, do you keep throwing money at something that nobody's using or fewer people are using?
And that's the hard question, because somebody is using that service, and you're
Right.
not going to disenfranchise that one person or two people or 100 people or 1,000 people using that service, throughout a system that isn't heavily utilized at times.
Yeah.
And
So how do you change the service to accommodate their needs, basically, right, as opposed to the past needs?
correct. And that's just part of the challenge of having an MBTA budget. Back in the days of forward funding, for those who remember, before 1999, MBTA used to build the state. We didn't just build us. There was no budget. They just did whatever.
Right.
So they could have, anything they wanted. But now they're working under a budget, and now it's not everything they want. And this is kind of the thing that's going to be challenging for all of us, is that, do we go back to the days they could just bill us at will, which the taxpayers picked up a big part of that subsidy, or do we, put them under more fiscal controls? But this is one of the drawbacks when there's a fiscal downturn. And people have to understand that the sales tax is a major funder for the T, and that's kind of what we are with them at the moment. And we shall see. As unfortunately, it's another one of those, like everything regarding COVID and post-COVID, it's a stay tuned situation.
Something else that's post-COVID is mail-in voting. Tacky, it's been extended again.
Yes, people like it. I've not heard people not like having an opportunity mail-in voting. It's been wildly successful. Secretary of State confirms that very low margins of error, no different from in-person voting, as well as City of Quincy has been held up as a model of how to do it. Thank you to Nikki and all the clerk staff and all the volunteers that work with Nikki that's not part of the clerk's office. And, obviously thank you to the voters to exercise your right to vote.
Secretary of State thinks it should be permanent. What do you think?
It's a constitutional change, in my opinion, legally speaking. And another lawyer legislature may correct me, so I may be completely wrong, but I think it will require a constitutional change. I'd be very supportive of the constitutional change to give the legislature the ability to do mail-in ballots, as well as allow municipalities and towns to do so. Town meeting may be a little complicated because of the nature of how open town meeting works. For those who've lived in towns or never been to a town government, they have open town meeting where the charter says a certain percentage of people that physically show up in a location is the legislature for the town. It can vote on town-related issues.
Right.
Representative town government, more like the legislature and the city council, can manage that. But I think open town meeting is the real question mark of whether they can figure something out there.
Yeah, I think you're right. That'll be a real challenge. And there are some communities not too far away from us that still have that form of government, for sure. So it'll be interesting to see.
It'll be interesting to see how that is managed. But I mean, in terms of other electeds, yeah, I think we can figure this out.
Okay. I know you're limited time today, so I do want to get to the issue of anti-Asian racism, discrimination, and violence, Jackie. And I know it's forefront on your mind because of what happened in Atlanta this week, but certainly since you've probably been elected to office, it's been something that's been on your mind.
Yeah, for those who don't know, I've been advocating on Asian issues long before I got elected. I was kind of reminding folks, despite what people think regarding my hair, I've been doing this well past 25 years now, whether it be locally in the city of Quincy in my younger days, and then now as an elected official, it's more of a statewide purpose. And, and talking, as I've talked in the past in the same show regarding my other colleagues around the country and what they've been seeing. And fortunately, there's not been many violent incidents in Massachusetts against Asians. However, the slurs, the verbal harassment, people being chased around, people being threatened, has definitely risen. And, I was in a little forum this week of 60 plus or so local Asian leaders, and people were sharing their experience, and they're predominantly female. Women are 3 times more likely in the country so far to receive some form of physical attack or harassment Elderly people in particular have been targeted. A Korean grandmother was punched in the face most recently in New York and knocked down. And there's also a viral video of another grandmother returning fire on the assailant, essentially. The sad part of all this is that this has been going on for 50 months, and anti-Asian issues, anti-Chinese, anti-Japanese, anti-Muslim, anti-Indian, you can make the whole list of antis. Discrimination, misconceptions, and stigmatizations and model minority myths has been going around for many, many, many decades. This is not new to me. This is not new to us. And I think some of your audience would be surprised to hear me say that. We've been living with this before I was alive. And my grandmother, before my mother was alive. This is how long this has been going on in this country. And your audience is probably like, oh, well, it has been that way. Well, you'd be surprised how little people in this country know about the histories of different Asian ethnic groups in the United States and how much each of them is marginalized, the voices taken away from them, and just the atrocities done by people locally, and not just any specific group of people in a community, but the entire community does to Asian Americans around the country. So, I hate having a tragedy this level arise. We have one of the more gruesome attacks on Asian Americans. It is one of many, by the way. This is not the first, nor will be last gruesome attack, unfortunately, to bring attention to this really historically problematic issue that we have. And COVID has truly brought this up to a new level that people older than I has not seen anything like this in a long time, but not since the LA riots, not since Vincent Chin, not since the Sikh massacre at their temple. People haven't seen anything like this in a while, and there's a whole younger generation of Asian Americans, have been alive during those other events, has never had it put in their face like this before on something that we've been living with for a long time, and the older generation. And this is a new experience, and very sad that they have to experience this.
Do you think that the current laws that are in place regarding hate crimes are adequate?
My colleague Tram Nguyen from Andover has a bill to work out the hate law statute a little more, where it addresses hate harassment, as well as some more clearer definitions of intent associated with hate crimes. Right now, hate crimes in Massachusetts intent. You have to demonstrate intent, and if you can't demonstrate intent, you have to look at some combination of factors that can lead to demonstration of intent. So obviously, people are smart enough to watch here. You just say your motivation is sex addiction, but you targeted 3 specifically minority-owned women Asian businesses. You knew they were. You scoped them out prior because the police said you scoped them out the day before, and you deliberately killed 6 women of color. And by the way, people's not talking about the survivors of that event. People did live through that event, which has not been talked about, and the trauma that's happened to them. So I'm still waiting for the news media to actually catch up on that part of the story about those poor people that were there that had to watch this tragedy happen in full in front of them. So, there's not even discussion about victims, the other victims of the news. This is how marginalized we become. This is how bad it has become in our media, that our media didn't even talk about the survivors. That's a demonstration of marginalization. So, the Representative Nguyen's proposal, is under consideration by us. I understand the DA's association is looking at the bill because ultimately they have to prosecute these crimes and they have to go through grand jury. But one of the challenges is twofold: getting good data about hate crimes, having people obviously come up and report hate crimes, but also more importantly, to determine how to investigate these things. As shown by the Capitol riot, the FBI is scrolling through the entire social media world to find demonstration, not just that you were there, but you had intent to commit a riot at the Capitol. And with today's social media, law enforcement should do more interviews, should utilize social media searches, should not say this is a hate crime right off the bat at the first interview. That does not create comfort in the Asian American community. And people are like, oh, well, that's their procedure. No. You look at other ethnic groups that are attacked, they do not say that's not a hate crime right off the bat. It's under consideration until you get to us. And now we're just like, well, it's a root off right off the bat. There's a different standard here. And I think people need to accept this in society, that there's a different standard for us, and it's bad.
Why do you think that is, Jackie?
Well, it's a continuation of the model minority myth, and it's a continuing idea that we're not part of a group because we're so different from everybody else. We don't fit in the narrative of binary thinking. We're not black and we're not white. So what are we? We don't share, a lot of us immigrants don't share the same religions. We don't share the same food cultures. We don't share a common romantic language. We don't share a European-based language. And then we're also, part of a group where either you hate us because we're taking away your jobs, or you love us because we make your overall scores in school, MCAS, look better. I mean, it's almost like this awful situation is we're conveniently chosen to whatever looks best for the narrative for political purposes. And politics we're convenient scapegoat in politics. It's not like, people are running out to defend this demographic when, Donald Trump is like, rallying against us. And I said it, so in the, and I'll say it again. I mean, as a guy who's done this a long time, just because you don't hear us doesn't mean we didn't say anything. And I will repeat this consistently because there's been a lot of advocates over the year before me, advocating the city, advocating in state, advocating nationally. But do you actually hear us? And we'll give you a little bit of trivia fact. People largely attribute to the DACA Act, which I know people listening have different controversial issues, perceive it as a Hispanic issue. That was started by a Korean student whose parents came in undocumented, got through a school system, did extraordinarily well, and was able to convince Dick Durbin, the senator, to try to push forward before 9/11 came through. 9/11 happened, and this country became so anti-immigrant so quickly, and we never came back from it, more so than ever. And this is kind of the world we live in now, and we have short memories, and not all of us know this history, but we live on these past actions, not really understanding the origin of how come we accept what we do.
It brings the question: how much of fear, racism, of bigotry, of discrimination is based on fear rather than facts?
It's partly fear, and it's partially preconceived notions of who people are, right? I mean, I represent lots of different neighborhoods. People watching this live in neighborhoods. If you're a lifetime resident, especially, know about our provincial mentality about different neighborhoods. And there's nothing wrong with that. We have enormous pride of where we live. And, people like myself are very proud to be a Wollaston kid. I mean, Beachy was my first school I went to as a child. I have a lot of stories about that if we share a different day, if people want to hear it. But I mean, it's undocumented already in the Patriot Lever. People threw rocks at me as a kid. Most children didn't want to have anything to do with the kid that didn't have the right clothes and the right shoes. But
is that racism, or is that just bigotry?
Up to a day I got elected, people were still saying racial slurs to me on Fennell Street from behind fences and bushes. These people are most likely close to my age in my own neighborhood, which I find interesting if I can represent these folks. I represent all these folks. And I told this to my colleagues in the house, and they're like, oh, you actually grew up in this. I'm like, yes, I did. Mm-hmm. And I somehow am here in this position despite it all. So the need to diminish ignorance starts at home. The need to diminish ignorance starts by society demonstrating that this is not how we accept, and this is not what we think you are. I won't name the person, but people are talking about inequity and how we're overachievers. And my response was, it was so overachievers. How come we're serving you Chinese food? Unless that waiter has a PhD in biotechnology but decided not to get into the business, you explain this to me. And there was stunned silence, right? Because we accept certain things around us, and I do too, as the norm. But assumes that we're all like high-income earners. Well, like in Quincy, for example, we have a high per capita in household here, actually above a state average for a working class city. People are like thinking here, like, what do you mean? We're a working class city. We can't be well above the state median. We are. But we also have more people from immigrant families working in households with multi-generational workers.
Mm-hmm.
So it shifts it up. So as opposed to having 2 people working in your home, you can have up to 6, perhaps, depending on the situation of a family. Grandma's working, grandpa's working, mom and dad's working, or the son or daughter's working, or they have jobs, whether at their small business maybe, or maybe have jobs outside.
Mm.
That shifts our numbers in terms of demographics. So the appearance of wealth isn't apparent unless you really look at their individual circumstances.
I guess the question is, at what point does it need to be legislated, or is it rather society issue that needs to be dealt with on an educational level?
Like BLM, a big part of that was about education at societal level.
Yeah.
Right, and it's an example that's been made by government, including folks like myself who are willing to share a story too. And my stories don't end there, unfortunately. I always have other stories to tell of things that happened to me and my family. But more importantly, it's a societal issue. You got to acknowledge this is real. And your behavior, and we tell your behavior is not acceptable, you got to understand why. And some folk, we're afraid to tell them they're not acceptable because they're in positions of power.
Mm-hmm.
People in positions of power may even think that, well, I'm not racist. Well, as soon as you say that, we've got a problem.
Mm.
You shouldn't even be thinking that. You should really be thinking about, is the things I'm thinking about, are they really something that's real, or is it something I made up, or what's going on here? It's not about
when you start asking questions, that's when you get answers.
That's correct. It's not about calling you a racist or not. I mean, I'm not a racist. Great. Have you thought about things you've said in your life? That's why I don't say I'm not a racist or anything like that, because I know, okay, maybe I did say something wrong and inappropriate. Okay, let me figure out what I did wrong there.
Right. I know you're taking. I'm sorry?
What I need to learn more. I mean, one of the funny things about being an Asian legislator, one of the first ones, is I had to really try around the state to visit other Asian groups, communities. I learned a lot of things about a lot of different people in over the years that I never knew about. And they shared their pains with me. So I have stories of other people's pain too around the state of different Asian ethnic groups.
Sure.
I don't have an answer. I don't have a solution. But I do carry all the stories with me to the day we can work towards a solution.
I know you're participating in a virtual forum through the district attorney's office next week. What do you hope will come out of that?
Well, unfortunately, the timing works out around the Atlanta event, and there's a heightened sense of fear already for the last 15 months. A lot of Asian Americans were already afraid, myself included, not because of just COVID, but generally the mood out there, because I've seen this before. The Atlanta situation has pushed that well over the edge. So the opportunity for our law enforcement to hear from residents regarding their fears and concerns, and whether we can come to law enforcement for help is paramount, especially in these times. Thank the District Attorney Michael Morrissey for putting this together, as well as people in his office and the various police chiefs, including Paul Keenan, to come and attend. We won't be the last time we're doing this. There's another event run by advocacy groups, Asian advocacy groups, on the 25th.
Yes.
Fine. My Facebook has a lot of those links. If people want to just listen in, I'm sure YouTube's will probably be provided by some of these organizations later. MAPC, Massachusetts Area Planning Council, did a survey on business impacts. Quincy region, the region around us, has the densest Asian population in terms of business owners. We have the densest ownership of businesses in the Massachusetts, in the Quincy area, including Braintree, Milton, and so forth. So we're the densest part, and we have had the highest economic impact of all community districts regarding COVID and anti-Asian economic impact. So, that study's been going forward that we'll look at. And then, at the legislature, Speaker Mariano is extremely aware of this. He represents an enormously diverse district. The Speaker represents one of the most diverse group of people in the Commonwealth. He's very aware of the situation. And, he's saddened by the tragedy as much as everybody else. And there'll be continual conversations with the Speaker about how we're going to approach this issue going forward. We all are not naive. We know we can't pass laws to stop people doing things that are not just right. But Perhaps we should review about the things that we can do to do remedies after the bad things happen that make some sense to try to properly identify what hate crimes are. And there's a bill out there by Jason Lewis, Senator Lewis, on more diversity of racial education and ethnic groups that are out there. There's they'll do a big study on whether or not our education system actually does truly represent our society. I'm 47. I think people hopefully figured that out by now. But my childhood education had very little education outside of U.S. history and most of Europe. I mean, I could talk about Bismarck, and I love talking history and the different documents that come through it. Those who have discussed with me, and I really should read more at some point. But you think about people don't know about the Asian participation in civil rights, do not know about the Japanese internment camps, do not know about the Chinese Exclusion Act, or the Page Act. They don't know about the U.S. occupation of Beijing. They were one of the four major superpowers that tore down the old empire, or the U.S. Basically owning the Philippines. Post Spanish American War. So this country has had a hand in the colonialism, but it wasn't in Africa, really, and it wasn't in South America. It was Asian colonialism. So yeah, I mean, this is a legitimate question about what you think you know and how little you actually do know.
Right. Good place to ask you to give out your contact information so folks can get more information.
Sure. As I said earlier, my public Facebook page, my public Facebook page is generally a very easy way to get some information. We just keep posting stuff on memes. It's easy to read pictures so people understand what's going on regarding COVID, as well as, TakiChain.org. We use that website to provide local resources, so you can find a phone number without actually having to call me. But of course, you can always call the office at 617-722-2014, 617-722-2014. Hit any staff member and leave a message. I'm getting people calling me, telling me, or emailing me saying, why isn't anyone picking up the phone after we're told to call you? Okay, leave a message. Pick any staff person. Just pick one. We'll get the message. We are still working remote until everyone is vaccinated. My office is no social distancing, meaning everyone's like less than 2 feet from each other. So, and given young people are heavy carriers, we're not going until they're vaccinated, okay? Because the people understand that. You can email me at taki.chan@mahouse.gov. Once again, my email has reached critical mass. And with the current situation in Atlanta has reached a new level of critical mass.
Yeah.
With different groups reaching out to me right now. So, need some help, give us a call. We'll do our best.
All right. And I know you got to get rolling, Taki, but I appreciate the opportunity. We'll continue this discussion in the future for sure.
Sure. And like I said, I enjoy your chats with you every week, Joe, and I look forward to our next one.
Likewise. Take care.